You're listening to the Electronic Media Collective Podcast Network. Yeah, it's a mouthful. For more great shows like the one you're about to enjoy, visit electronicmediacollective.com. And now, our feature presentation.
This is Randy. In the future, schools will adopt the Marvel method of arithmetic. Any number higher than 1 can also be a number 1, and there are no numbers higher than 37. If you reach 37, then you simply restart at number 1 and add a point now.
This is Melanie, and in the future, everyone will carry special metal umbrellas to protect ourselves from the horrible urine of the flying cats.
And this is Jesse, and in the future, bats will not sneak up on you in the middle of the night. Instead, they will politely say hello and then be on their merry way.
All right, this is the Grawlix Podcast. Do you want to tell us about this bat story? What happened to you?
Well, I better tell the story, otherwise my future prediction doesn't make any sense. Well, okay, so in the middle of the night, I have a hard time sleeping in the summer for whatever reason. Like, I get all geared up all year long, and so I'm exhausted when it's time to go to sleep. Well, in the summer, since I'm a teacher, I don't have that, and so I wind up like being all jazzed and I can't sleep. So I get up in the middle of the night and I use the restroom like so many people do. And I'm finishing up and I hear a little noise behind the door and I think nothing of it because we have this mirror, this like flimsy Walmart mirror that we took down when we painted the bathroom. And so sometimes it slips and it'll make a noise. So I don't think anything of it until I see this little head poke from behind the door. It crawled across the bath towel rail, and so he's like on the bath towel, and he just pops his head out for a second, just long enough for me to be like, wait, is that a... And then it flies at me. So, we've dealt with bats in the past, but there's just something special about a bat being in your bathroom and flying right into your face. And then it's all me trying not to get swooped on, getting through the house, making sure the dogs aren't going to try to chase it. And then it we've got this ceiling fan, which for whatever reason really bothers bats. Then it will go immediately to that ceiling fan. So I have this whole routine of make sure he finds the ceiling fan, open the door, shut off the ceiling fan, and wait for him to fly out the front door. So we've got it down to a science now, but yeah, it's just that moment of discovery that is just so horrifyingly delightful.
That's the type of thing you're glad nobody's around to see happen.
Yeah.
Right. Because I'm in my boxers at nearly 1 a.m, standing out on my front porch, hoping this bat will just please fly out the door.
British Fest. Yes. What's the what's the date on that?
I believe it's the last weekend in June.
Yeah, I've got it on my Google Calendar. British Fest. If you're in the Omaha, Nebraska area, you can check it out. Go to britishfest.weebly.com. It is the June 27th through the 29th. So yeah, the last weekend of June.
Yes.
And I hope to be there. I hope to be there at least Sunday. I'd like to make it more days, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure I'll be able to swing those days off of work.
Right.
But at least Sunday, I'd like to be there.
And I'll be there with Axe and Kaler at the Tank Zombie Studios booth. So if you're in the area, swing by, grab a card, tell us what you want us to talk about, chat us up.
That reminds me, since our last episode, Free Comic Book Day happened, and you also had another table with Axton. Is it
Yes.
Yep.
Axton, yes.
Axton. How did that go?
It went well. It was kind of like this marathon of I guess I didn't know what to expect. You popped in and saw how many people were there.
Yeah, I was really surprised.
lines and lines and lines. And I thought, oh, surely they're all just here to meet the Firefly guy. But no, a lot of people came back, and all the artists were doing these free sketches. And I'm sitting next to this guy that's like super pro. Like, he teaches comic book art classes through Metro. And he's giving away these immaculately beautiful drawings for free. And here I am cranking out Adventure Time and My Little Ponies. But you'd be surprised how long my line was. There's a demand for My Little Ponies. I'll tell you that.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, it was good. Really busy. And so busy, in fact, that like we ordered lunch, and Axton's wife popped in and gave us lunch, and we really didn't even have time to eat it. Like, we were literally drawing from the moment it started till the moment we left.
That's crazy.
I don't know how you can do it. I'd be like, hand cramp.
Well, yeah, like the only times I got up were to like use the restroom, kind of thing, get a quick swig of water.
Mm-hmm.
It was okay, except that I realized pretty quickly on that next time I'll need some kind of like elevated angled surface so that I can draw without hunching over.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, my back was killing me the next day because I'd never done that before, so it was all new.
Not too much new our way, except we did just get back from Godzilla just moments ago.
Godzilla!
And so we'll be talking about that. Jesse's seen Godzilla.
Yes.
And we could probably do a spoiler-free Godzilla review or discussion, you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there might be minor spoilers, because there's one thing that I'd like to mention that I didn't know going into it.
Mm-hmm.
But, so yeah, we're going to talk about that. Today we're going to talk about X-Men, which Melanie didn't see, so that'll be another spoiler-free discussion.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to be tricky.
That will be tricky.
Well, you're going to do it anyway, okay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that's cool. I just, like, oh, how do you do that?
Yeah.
We'll do it, though. We'll do it.
And then we're also going to talk about our poll list selection from last month, which was Punisher. Punisher Max, the first story arc by Garth Ennis. And then I think also we have a couple webcomics recommendations, and that'll be most of the show from... Oh, and Doctor Who. We got a big show. Yeah, I think we'll start with Godzilla. You've seen this weekend, which was this opening weekend for Godzilla, or was that last weekend?
I think it was last weekend.
Okay.
Whenever we saw it, yeah. This last week of school, everything's a blur, so wibbly wobbly and all. But yeah, it wasn't this weekend. It was at least last weekend. And before we went and saw it, I like take an inch or get an inch and take a mile. My wife really wanted to see it on IMAX 3D, and I thought yes. And so I thought, she's already conceded that point. Let's go even further. And I got her to watch the American original, Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Uh-huh.
Couldn't get Gojira, the original Japanese version, but King of the Monsters is on Netflix, so I convinced her to watch that. And so that it simultaneously heightened and detracted a little bit from watching this modern version.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, it helped in some respects because, we're doing spoiler-free. There's some callbacks to it.
Okay.
To the original. I mean, like they kind of hint that back in the time when Godzilla was made, that Godzilla was romping around.
Yeah.
They kind of imply that.
Yeah, I could not get Melanie to watch any of the older Godzilla films.
Yeah, sorry.
But I did get her to go with us, go with me to the theater to see it.
Baby steps.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. I watched the top 10 about Godzilla, though.
Top 10 facts about Godzilla on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
I believe Godzilla did pretty well. I was just trying.
Oh yeah. It was the top film of the year at that point. Mm-hmm. Opening weekend, it was the top film of 2014 so far.
What did you guys think? I'm gonna let one of you guys start.
Okay. Well, my
Okay, you coming at it from a not really a Godzilla fan.
Okay,
which is interesting.
Coming at it from not a really Godzilla fan, I was slightly disappointed that the movie Godzilla had a lot less Godzilla than I was expecting and kind of wanting. But other than that,
Yeah.
Well, yeah. He should have.
That's been a pretty common complaint, and I don't think anyone can probably argue it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I liked it overall, but I was disappointed that, just like you said, there wasn't as much Godzilla as I would have hoped for. Mm-hmm. And there's a few excellent, Godzilla hits some poses, there's some cool little sequences where they, showcase this is Godzilla, and, there were some cool moments like that. But then there's instances where you finally get this, big clash that you're waiting for, and it cuts away to do this whole other scene. And I'm like, no, this is, the scene that it cuts away to is cool, but it's not what I wanted. I want to see Godzilla wrecking some stuff up. I want to see some stuff happening, and instead they cut away for this other scene.
Yeah.
They had the Transformers problem where they made the humans more important than they needed to be.
Yeah, exactly.
And I personally found that I didn't care about the humans. The ones that interested me weren't in the film as much as I had expected as well. Much like Godzilla.
Yeah.
Like Watanabe?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He had and again, this is slightly spoilery, but outside of kind of exposition and setting up the history of this situation, he had nothing. They had nothing for him to do in almost the whole movie.
Yeah, and he's the Oscar nominee, so his great strength would be delivering lines, and sometimes the lines they gave him were kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
There's that moment where it actually took me out because I kind of laughed at him. He's going on this whole exposition about how there are these, nature self-corrects and all, and then he's like, "Let them fight."
Yeah.
Yep.
He went from super science-y nature guru to Shang Tsung in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah, let them fight. And they use that in the trailer. That's totally a trailer moment. You can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
where they're like, "All right, that'll be perfect to sell this movie to an audience."
Randy, have you seen the original?
I have, and I had not realized. I don't think I've seen the original Japanese version. I think the only one I've seen is, and maybe it was King of the Monsters. What's the American version where they basically intercut a bunch of American story into the original?
That's King of the Monsters. Basically, they take Raymond Burr, who's also Perry Mason, and they splice him in as the American journalist that's over there. And so that's basically the original Godzilla, but then they splice him in so that it'd be more appealing to an American audience.
I feel a little shameful that I did not realize that was the case, and so I've only seen the Americanized original version. I have not seen the actual original movie.
Well, and it wasn't particularly available over here until just recently. Mm-hmm. I think maybe it was when Godzilla 2000 came out or shortly thereafter that they re-released the Japanese original here in the United States. Mm-hmm. So for an awfully long time, you would have had to search pretty hard to get that Japanese original here.
I was going to say that reminds me of another one of my things. Just because I'm me and I want to know everything that's going on. I'm nosy, I guess. I was kind of upset that a lot of times they didn't have subtitles, and I was like, "What are they talking about? I want to know what he's talking about."
I enjoyed that they tried to there were still the Japanese characters. It's a little, again though, they didn't give them a whole lot of screen time, but I enjoyed that they tried to pull a balance. It's not just Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But partway through the movie, that fell away pretty quick. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, there's all sorts of things that you could say about this movie if you get full spoilers, but I don't want to ruin it for anybody entirely.
Yeah, I know. One of the main things I want to talk about, I can't talk about.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm really curious. Maybe we should just give a warning that it's going to be full spoiler.
Well,
Are you willing to do that or no?
I don't know.
No?
I wouldn't care, but it's really new still.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we're going to have people want to listen, we don't want to ruin it for everybody.
That's a good point. I was hoping for more Cranston.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
He's pretty good, though. I mean, I was impressed with what he did, but yeah.
Yeah.
Since Malcolm in the Middle, I've always been a fan of the guy. And then, of course, it seems like everybody has been a fan of him since Breaking Bad.
Yeah.
So I was... you said what? What?
I was thinking, talking about it in the car home, I'm like, Malcolm's dad, and then I switched to Walter.
Yeah. But he was a big draw for me, and I thought he was good in it. I just really would have wished for more of him.
But that's it. Well, that was kind of the thing, is I wish for all of the things the people and the things I wanted to see that drew me to the movie, there were very little of.
Yeah.
But I mean, it wasn't like a bad movie.
Yeah, it sounds like we're being kind of hard on it, but those are the criticisms. Otherwise, like, yeah, there was entertaining stuff. The effects were good. It was all very dark.
Yeah.
I kind of would have liked it to be a little brighter at parts.
Mm-hmm. But I liked the destruction. It was pretty awesome. Like the giant things flying around and whatnot. It was all very cool. Well done.
Yeah. I like how they just didn't seem to care about the humans.
No,
it
yeah.
really did feel like two totally different stories were happening.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I just would have liked to follow the other story more than the story we followed most of the time.
Yeah.
And you couldn't have... I'm not saying... You couldn't have 90 minutes or 2 hours of just monsters fighting.
What about Pacific Rim? No, I'm sorry.
Well, that's kind of it. In that case, you probably could, but... So I understand why you got to have people in there.
Yeah.
Otherwise, where's your end to the story? But I didn't find the people they chose to follow particularly interesting. But
And it kind of suffered from that whole origin movie thing where you've got to set the stage, and that's going to take some time. I think they took a little more time than they needed to, but...
And I'm surprised that the origin was less about what you would have expected. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because they establish this, and then they're like, oh yeah, and then Godzilla.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Godzilla, and he's there.
He's there. Oh.
He's been around. We know about him.
Yeah.
Sort of.
I do like that they acknowledge that, they did kind of acknowledge around the same period as the first movie happened, is like, that's when we discovered.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably saying too much. It's so hard to not talk spoilers.
That's okay, you're hard to understand.
Really? Well, it's because I'm trying to talk in circles. I'm trying to talk around it.
That's what I'm saying.
I did enjoy it.
Yeah.
I would watch it again. It's not quite as awesome as I would have liked, but it wasn't bad. It's not a bad movie.
Mm-hmm. But Godzilla did some cool things.
Godzilla did some excellent things.
Yeah, like his atomic breath. I don't think that's too spoilery to say that
No, I don't
plays
think
a
so.
part, and it's epic.
I was worried that they weren't. I was hoping they were going to do it. I was concerned that maybe they wouldn't. And when he first does it, they make it. Yeah, it's epic. They make a scene of it.
That was a good payoff. That was worth the wait.
Yeah, there were, like I said, they had him. They had the iconic Godzilla moments, like when you first see him, it's awesome. Like when they first actually show his whole face and everything, it's pretty awesome.
Okay, I'm not a Godzilla fan,
Uh-huh.
so I must say he's a lot chunkier than I thought he was supposed to be.
Really?
Yeah.
I've even seen memes where they're joking that they made him, since it's a Hollywood movie, they made him more like ripped and muscular looking than he used to look.
Oh yeah, more svelte. Yeah.
Yeah. But well, he's a big like hunchy backed lizard guy.
Yeah.
And there were a couple times where it's like, yeah, he does, like even in this where it's just the design of Godzilla, I'm like, he does look a little goofy, but that kind of makes him likable.
Yeah.
Well, and one of my friends pointed out to me that the word Godzilla is actually it's a splicing of the American word gorilla and the Japanese word for whale.
Mm-hmm.
And so like in that case, there were moments in the film where I was like, oh, I can totally see the gorilla part, and obviously the way he swims is that male part. And so, like, in a sense, I kind of like the design of him. I mean, at least it wasn't 1998.
That's not Godzilla.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like the Godzilla design, and in a way, it's like the movie could have been worse so long as Godzilla at least looked like Godzilla. You know, they would have at least done something right. And the movie's not that bad, so they nailed it. They nailed several things correctly.
Yeah.
Coming out of the theater, I really, really liked it, and now you're giving it some time. Like the criticisms come through a little bit more as time passes. But what I'd say about it is that the things that were awesome about Godzilla were like really awesome, and then there were those other parts where it's like, what? Like, there's just maybe 3 things in the movie that just kind of make me scratch my head a little bit, but they're not so distracting that I'm gonna dislike the movie based on them. Like, I'll just be like, huh, and then I'll move on.
Yeah, I would agree. Like I said, it sounds like we're being kind of harsh on it. It was still good.
Yeah.
And yeah, I wasn't totally unhappy with it. They hit the things they needed to hit. It's still a big American summer blockbuster, so you got to expect certain things. And they played to that, but it's not like Transformers level ridiculous story. And then there's Transformers. I mean, there's stuff happening. It's relevant, and then there's Godzilla and monsters.
They did a good job of making the character you mostly follow in the action most of the time.
And he's not Sam Witwicky.
Oh, man.
There's not a lot to him, but he's not unlikable. He's just a little flat, I thought. I'm not sure the actor's name offhand.
I don't know, but he looks like other people. And I'm like, is this that... I don't even know the actor that I think he looks like, but I'm like, is this that guy from that other movie, except he's a little buffer now?
He's not from Kick-Ass, is he? I don't know if we have to Grawlix that or not.
Well, I've actually thought about that before. It's a title. I don't think we should, but if you want to, we can. But it's up to you. Actually, now that you say it does kind of seem like that kid.
That's who I was thinking it was, yeah. Yep, that's him.
Oh, wow.
And he's just buffer.
And he'll also be Quicksilver in the upcoming Avengers 2.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be interesting.
But yeah, that makes sense because in Kick-Ass 2 he was already buffing up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But he looks much more so now. Even his face seems more whiter.
He just didn't come across... But then again, in Kick-Ass, that's his character. He just didn't come across like a doof.
A doof?
A doofus. Yeah, a doof and a goof.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see him as both those characters now.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't catch it at first either, and I think it was Holly that pointed it out.
In that case, I'm a little more impressed with his performance, even though, like I said, it seemed flat, but I'm actually a little more impressed because he didn't at all come across like he did in the other stuff I've seen him in. Oh, he's also in the Captain America: The Winter Soldier, uncredited though, so probably a smaller part, but interesting.
Oh yeah, because he's Quicksilver.
Okay, so
he's just like on a video monitor or something.
Okay, so they just kind of did a little setup in that for Quicksilver, huh?
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how to approach this from a review standpoint, but I've already said it. Overall, I enjoyed it. Was a little disappointed in where the characters that they chose to follow and how certain scenes were handled. But there were definitely cool sequences. There's the sequence with the Halo jump that they had in the trailer. I think even the first trailer, maybe.
Yeah.
The sound, like the music in that part, was very cool, and it's just what they had in the trailer. That's a very, very cool sequence.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I enjoyed the movie very much, and I'm not upset that is the movie that I got to see rather than the X-Men movie that I would have preferred to have seen.
Yeah, you would have preferred to see it, I think.
I think, like, I have my criticisms of it and whatnot, but I think it was really good. I'd highly recommend it to most folks. I think probably the best example of how universal this movie kind of is that my friend went with his wife and his third grade daughter, and they all came away from the movie with something that they enjoyed. So I think overall it's a pretty enjoyable film that you can even take your family to. I mean, there's some devastation. The monsters could be scary, so use your best judgment. But it's not so horrific that you couldn't bring your kids.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's PG-13?
I think so.
I would assume so for at least the scenes of terror and stuff like that. But yeah, it's not gory at all. There's nothing like that. I don't even remember any foul language. It does seem fairly family friendly.
Mm-hmm. Except for maybe a couple shots, most of the any kind of death is just implied.
Yeah, there's a lot of quick or off-screen type stuff.
Yeah,
it's true.
Except for there's a couple of exceptions, but
yeah,
for the most part you don't really see anything. You just know in your head that, oh man,
yeah,
those poor people.
Yeah, exactly. Interesting side note. The director of this, I believe the only other movie he's directed up till this point was Monsters, which I believe we watched. It's a foreign movie. It's like a handheld style.
Oh, I liked that one.
Like Cloverfield?
Yeah, kind of like that. In which it's these two people trying to get out of this country in which there's an invasion of these giant monsters, so it makes sense that they gave him Godzilla.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe he's working on either an American remake or a sequel now. Oh, he's just executive producer on that. But
I think it's a sequel.
Yeah, Monsters Dark Continent is supposed to come out. I'm not sure when it's Wikipedia's got it listed as 2014, but... And also, this kind of ties into recent news, and I'm guessing based on the fact that Godzilla did so well, they're doing a standalone Star Wars movie, and he gets to direct that. In 2016.
A standalone, eh?
Yeah, separate of
the trilogy.
Yeah.
Huh.
So that could be interesting. So, do you think we'll see Godzilla sequels? I mean, even though this is technically a sequel to many, but
I think they basically said that it was tentative in the first place, but they were already kind of planning it, and the success basically ensured that it was going to happen.
If anything does well, there's got to be a sequel nowadays.
That's true. Well, good. I would like to watch. I'd like to see more, so long as they keep them. So long as the quality's still decent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because Godzilla fans are so concerned about quality.
Well, okay, but the problem is we've seen what happens when a big budget Godzilla movie goes wrong.
Yeah.
I've seen I've seen many Japanese low budget Godzilla movies that went wrong, but they're still fun.
Yeah.
But when a big budget American blockbuster movie goes wrong, it's not fun. It's ridiculous.
Right.
Well, it's like a crappier version of Jurassic Park.
Yeah, it's like Jurassic Park 2 and 3. Yeah. Those were fun. From what I understand, we have a chance of seeing another crappier version of Jurassic Park before too long either.
It might not be crappy.
It might not. All right. So Godzilla.
Yes.
Good job, Godzilla.
Good job, Godzilla.
Good job, Godzilla.
Truly king of the monsters.
Yeah.
Yes. Even Perry Mason says so.
Yep. A rough segue. You mentioned Quicksilver. 15 minutes ago.
Are you trying to pull a fast one here, Randy?
Oh. I was hoping that would just flash by you.
Oh!
That was forced too. Okay. So, me and Jesse have seen X-Men Days of Future Past.
Mm-hmm.
You haven't seen it yet.
No.
I'm really surprised at how hard it was to talk about Godzilla without spoilers. This is going to be really tricky, I think.
We'll just have to keep it kind of concise, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I could leave the room if I need to.
No, it's okay, because that's an even newer movie than Godzilla, so we should probably keep it spoiler-free.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I listen to a lot of other podcasts, and I prefer when they do spoiler-free reviews of newer movies, because most of the time I haven't got to see it, and if they do a spoiler review, then I'm not going to listen to the podcast, and I want people to listen to the podcast. So.
Right. That was my point.
Okay, so Days of Future Past, for anyone that hasn't read the original work, it's an X-Men story that happened quite a ways back, and it deals with alternate future timelines. And so this movie, kind of loosely, is based on that. But they go their own direction with it, for sure. They hold true to some of the kind of key elements that made it Days of Future Past. One of them being that future where the Sentinels are, like really key in even more mutant, decimation and oppression. Mm-hmm. Which has been a theme through, I don't think that's spoilery to say, because that's been the theme of X-Men since issue 1.
Oh, yeah.
Is that, they're feared and misunderstood. And so this just takes it that much further, but we throw in that time travel element where now the mutants, things have gotten as bad as they're possibly going to get, and they are going to try to go back in time and course correct. And as we know, in any good time travel story, what could possibly go wrong with that idea? So this kind of serves to be both kind of an homage to that original work, and kind of serves as a sequel for X-Men First Class. So you really, I don't know that you necessarily have to have seen every X-Men movie ever made, but if you haven't seen X-Men First Class, you might find yourself kind of lost.
Yeah, one of my coworkers was saying he was going to go see it, I believe, last night. And I was asking him, I was like, well, have you seen the other ones? And he said no, he hadn't seen any of the other ones, which, like 7 movies in, how do you not at least catch one of them?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But anyway, he's like, well, I heard that you don't necessarily have to see the other ones to see this one. And I think that's kind of true. I mean, I think the story still works, but I told him, I was like, well, if you have time, at least see First Class, because if of any of them, that one sets this up most. It's most relevant to First Class.
I haven't seen it yet, but I want to. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that I heard about it, and I'm going to ask you if this is true, is that they made this movie in a lot of ways to fix some of the other movies that weren't so great.
That's, okay, without going into spoilers, that's one thing I would like to talk about a little bit about, is the fixes and possible plot holes that it doesn't fix.
Yeah.
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 So then we're going to spoil old movies, is what you're saying.
Possibly. Okay, well, on that front, all I'll say is it pretty much fixes everything in a way. Mm-hmm. Well, it's not a secret that X-Men X3 or whatever, The Last Stand, which is widely considered the worst one, and I would agree. Yeah. And they, even when I first watched it, they did things. They did things that I didn't understand, like why they would do.
Like kill everybody off?
Like kill everyone off.
Yeah.
And they killed half the cool characters, and then a lot of the other characters, they took away their powers, so I'm like, you're killing your franchise right here. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Perhaps guessing they didn't, I don't see how they didn't expect to continue with it. Mm-hmm. But, it mends a lot, and it does pretty well at doing so without opening too many other plot holes. There is contradictions with Wolverine Origins.
Which one was that? Was that the one with Deadpool?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's contradictions with Wolverine Origins, but in a way, it seems like for the most part, they ignored that movie pretty heavily.
Yeah, that movie was a pretty big contradiction in and of itself.
Yeah, I agree.
It's almost like they decided, they're like, listen, we can fix some things, but some things are too far gone. Let's just pretend like that didn't happen.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot like Godzilla, I was super excited for this movie, and I was trying to keep my expectations in check going into it. I have to do that for any movie, because, you you don't want to walk into it expecting greatness because you're just bound to be let down anyway. And like we were saying, Godzilla was good. There was a little bit of disappointment in portions. For the most part, I wasn't disappointed with this at all. It was, I think X-Men was fantastic.
Yeah.
Right. It's pretty hard to follow up what's considered an absolute classic in the run of a comic that's been going decades and decades.
Mm-hmm.
So by throwing the name Days of Future Past on there right off the bat, you're gonna leave some room for some criticism, I think, right off the bat,
mm-hmm.
or at least that will be a window that a lot of people are going to crawl through and say this movie was terrible and it's nothing like the text. Which, X-Men First Class took a lot of liberties as well.
That's on my list of shame. I have not read the Days of Future Past storyline, but you have, Jesse. And
yes.
I know, and I had read that you shouldn't go into it expecting that.
Right.
But how with your knowledge of it, how did that affect your viewing of the movie?
Oh, how spoilery do you want me to get?
About what?
For the book. I won't spoil the movie, but
Okay, I was going to say about which one, the movie or the comic, because
more the comic, because right off the bat, they change the core person that goes back in time.
Yeah, I had heard that.
And they kind of adapt someone else's powers in order to make it happen. So there's some things where you're like, I don't know if they can do that, but I think that they adapted it well for this modern audience, and I think that they used some I don't know, for lack of a better term, logic, like modern logic within the context of these movies that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Like who's best suited for the time travel. There's a lot of differences because I believe in the original comic, and it's been a while since I've read it. I believe all of the future stuff pretty much happens at the beginning of the book. So you get all of your future like at the beginning, and then the rest of it is we got to stop this future.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get to see a lot of really important characters have already died in the future, and you can see that a lot of important characters do die before they send so-and-so back.
Mm-hmm.
And so in this they play it more back and forth, so that you don't necessarily see everybody decimated in the first 20 minutes.
I do like the little bit of back and forth.
I think it does a really good job of the handful of elements that they hold to make this Days of Future Past. I think they did a really good job with it, and tying it into First Class, it's the best way that they could. They have the Sentinels, they have the core plot of what's supposed to happen in Days of Future Past. It's a different character, it's a different reason, but it follows the same kind of plot line.
Mm-hmm.
in that they're what they're sent back to do is to course correct this one key moment in time, and they make some different choices with it that I thought were really kind of cool. Like the science of the Sentinels is totally different because Sentinels are just Sentinels.
Mm-hmm.
And so they take that new places.
Yeah.
But it was done well. I mean, like it actually kind of explains how Sentinels work, because the Sentinels always just worked. They always just were these adaptable mutant killing machines, and they never really were explained how they had that capability. And so this movie does a little bit better job of trying to explain that.
Yeah, I thought that was a pretty interesting part of the movie, and it plays a pretty big role in just how things go down. Specifically, their explanation for how they have these capabilities itself is a huge plot point for the movie. One criticism of the Sentinels, I liked the first Sentinels, like the earliest Sentinels, but the future Sentinels, I thought looked a lot like that creature from the first Thor movie. You know what I'm talking about? That metal creature?
Oh, yeah.
That could shoot fire out of its face?
Yeah.
I
know what you're talking about.
Yeah, the design was really close to that, actually.
And I can kind of see, I mean, like, knowing a little bit more about how they've adapted the Sentinels an awful lot over time. So the future Sentinels start to resemble something totally different to where, like, modern continuity, the Sentinels that we have, just if there's an X-Men book happening like right now in the quote-unquote present, those Sentinels don't look anything like the Sentinels that we were used to and what we got exposed to in the Days of Future Past storyline. They're more like they walk among us, kind of Terminator style. This harkens a little bit to what would be considered the Nimrod class of Sentinels. And so, you know, like, I could kind of forgive it, but yeah, it was a little bit jarring. You know, these are the first Sentinels that you're going to see on screen. You'd kind of want them to look like the classic design.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand why they wouldn't look like the early ones, but I was a little thrown by that design. The portal stuff was awesome.
Yeah.
Like, there's some really great, action set pieces, and you can definitely see an influence of certain things like the game Portal in the way that portals are used. Mm-hmm. So yeah. I thought that was fun.
There's a lot of fun mutants that we hadn't seen on the screen before, and then some that we had, and we finally get to see them have their day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, they actually know how to use their powers now. We've only waited 7 films to see this.
And I love the casting.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the cast was held over from previous X-Men movies, obviously, but still, they were well cast to begin with.
Peter Dinklage.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. That guy's great. We watched Game of Thrones, and he's great in that.
Oh, is he the little person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's in this, and I was really impressed with... Okay, so he's in this. Mm-hmm. I think the thing that impressed me most is they didn't go with the expected route of, like, we have a little person in here for this reason. Like, he's just cast as a person. Mm-hmm. Like, it doesn't... Yeah. And this isn't necessarily spoiler. It doesn't come into play at all that he's a little person.
Yeah, well, that's good. I like it when they can do that rather than focus on that as a, you know...
I like it because he's a good actor, and they cast him in here because he's a good actor.
He gave that character some depth that we hadn't seen, probably even in the books, and you have time to get into development in the books. But I think they really did a good job of fleshing him out.
Mm-hmm. I thought the look of the movie was interesting. You got the future stuff, which is dark and a little bit more like what you might expect from a future, a dystopian type setting.
What if Mordor were blue?
Yeah.
Instead of red. If Mordor were blue, that's the future.
And then I like the look of the past. Can we say, like, what time period the past stuff happens in? No.
They don't jump around, though?
Not really.
That surprises me. I would expect a time travel movie, you'd want them to be time traveling.
One thing I liked about this, their take on the time travel, is they specifically, like, set the rules of, like, this is how it works. Mm-hmm. And the rules themselves are kind of designed to work around, like, all kinds of crazy paradoxes and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, it's specifically, this is how it works, and then... I don't want to say any more because it's a spoiler, but I liked how they set the time travel rules.
So you couldn't, like, kill your own grandpa and then become your own grandpa?
Well, you could. You could. I mean, that's not necessarily something you'd want to do.
No, I know.
Yeah.
But no, actually,
I was just thinking Futurama.
Actually, and I don't want to spoil it. You couldn't. I don't think it would work that way. Actually. Right, Jesse? It wouldn't work that way. Just the way they have it set up, you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I can't say anymore.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm asking too much.
But I liked how they handled the time travel stuff, and they have it set up in such a way that it kind of works around most issues with time travel movies. Mm-hmm. And it kind of makes it also a little less messy. Like you said, like you were kind of expecting a lot of jumping around, which would have been cool too, but it's a very clean way they set it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Not that things always go smooth and clean, but the rules of the time travel itself is very specific.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love time travel.
And I think they borrow from some good time travel that we've seen in the past. Like, it reminded me of Somewhere in Time, that Christopher Reeves movie.
I don't know if I've seen it.
Probably better that you haven't.
Oh, really? Okay.
I mean, because that could be spoilery.
Okay.
If you knew what I was talking about, but I highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite time travel movies. But it is a straight up love story. It's a time travel love story. Christopher Reeves, very good.
I'm trying to think of what else. There are some excellent scenes. I would watch it again. Like Godzilla, I might wait till it comes out on video and I'd watch it again, maybe. But you were talking about potentially watching it, going to the theater, see it, and I was like, I'll go.
X-Men?
Yeah, I'd go see it again.
Yeah, I know. I want to go, like, when we're done.
I'd go see it tonight.
I'd rather, actually, honestly, if we're going to see it, I kind of would rather see it tonight because it's $5 Tuesdays.
Yeah.
And that's way cheaper.
But yeah, it's that kind of movie I would go watch it again. Because it's good, but there's a few sequences there's a few action sequences and moments that are excellent, I thought. Mm-hmm. And I'm trying to think of a way so I can at least, like, convey to Jesse specifically one of my favorite parts without spoiling it.
Yeah, I know exactly how you can do that. Use your phone and text him.
Well, but I also, if people have seen it and they're listening, I also want them to know what I'm talking about.
Okay, yeah, I get what you're saying.
But I have to be very careful not to spoil.
You do.
But anyway, I can't think of anything. Okay. I can't think of a way to put it.
So here's a question.
Yes.
And it's one that I've been asking myself, and it is, I like it because I'm like a comic book person. And so I get all of the references they're making, and I get the kind of the format of this time travel and all that. Do you think that the casual moviegoer is going to dig this movie as much as the hardcore X-Men fan?
Everything I've heard, for the most part, has been favorable towards this. So if you're able to pull off an X-Men movie in a way that the X-Men fans still like, it's going to be hard to beat their love for the movie. You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know that the general audiences would like it as much, but it's doing very well. And I know that general audiences it's critically, I believe it's still looked at pretty well. I think with comic book movies that do very well, I think the majority of people who go see it and are like, yeah, that's good, aren't necessarily comic book fans. I think comic book fans specifically is a lot smaller number than we might expect. And it seems to be well received, generally.
Mm-hmm. I would say, because, well, I mean, I've read some X-Men, but I haven't read a lot. And when I saw most of the other movies, I hadn't read any. And I don't really think it matters. I mean, it's cool if it's good characters and a good movie. Mm-hmm.
Well, and it also helps from a general audience point of view that this is essentially 7 movies into a huge franchise that's been going on 14, 15 years almost since the first one came out. Not all the characters are well known, but the established characters are well known at this point. Mm-hmm. But if this was the first X-Men movie, I don't know that it'd be accepted quite as well. But since we already have this set up, at least these characters, you don't have to really worry about audiences being confused by the characters or not, or not accepting the characters. And you can do a story like this where it focuses. It's almost kind of a concept piece, in a way where you can do this time travel story because for the most part the characters are taken care of. You don't have to worry about that.
Right.
I think if you were to try to introduce characters, like all the characters, there's a lot of characters in this movie, and time travel, that might be a bit much for audiences.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, definitely, because that's one of the issues that I have with the X-Men comic I just recently, started reading it not
Yeah.
too long ago. But I get confused. I'm like, there's so many people,
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard for me to keep track of them sometimes. But then again, I read. I binge.
You have a hard time keeping track of most comics because you read so many.
Well, yeah.
But most of the Marvel books that's an issue, is that you're not just dealing with X-Men characters when you read like All New X-Men or Uncanny X-Men. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with all of the Marvel characters potentially at any point in time can come in, mm-hmm. and you're kind of expected to know who it is. One thing I did want to mention is there are a lot of characters in the movie, but I didn't find the issue of like when you have this huge ensemble cast movie, mm-hmm. where a lot of times you don't get enough time with that character, it keeps jumping around. This movie does a pretty good job at balancing that. It doesn't jump around a whole lot. Mm-hmm. Like, there's a lot of characters, but there's the central groups that you stick with for the most part.
Okay.
And Quicksilver is awesome.
He is awesome.
I think that's one of like, they released those early pictures of a lot of the characters, and Quicksilver looked ridiculous. Mm. And he did. And that's played by that guy that's in American Horror Story.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, he's my favorite.
Yeah, he's
on American Horror Story.
Yeah. He plays Quicksilver, and that's like, in terms of fun, the section that I wish he was in it more, because the section that he's in is the most fun that the movie is during the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Plus, he's super useful. They could have used him through the whole movie.
Yeah.
But maybe that's an issue of like, well, that would simplify things too much.
Well, that's with all of them. There's, people having all these amazing powers. There's so much more that they could do with their freaking powers that they can't do. Otherwise, it would be like, there's no point in the story.
The story's over in
done.
15 minutes.
Yeah.
Imagine if they were all on a team.
Exactly. That's really kind of the trick of something like that, where you're either working with such powerful characters or a group of characters together who have all these powers. You have to invent ways for them to separate them, or else it'd be very difficult to present a conflict that wouldn't be over in 10 minutes. Yeah.
It's a Superman problem.
Yeah.
He's so amazing that you just have to make up reasons why he can't just do everything.
Yeah.
That's like early seasons of Doctor Who. We've got to separate Barbara, Ian, and the Doctor so that they have to find each other for the next 6 episodes.
Oh man. Yeah, they drag it out a little bit. That sounds like a segue to me.
Oh hey.
Okay, final words on X-Men. I really liked it. A lot of people are saying it's their favorite of all the X-Men movies, and it might be my favorite of the X-Men movies. It's hard to say. I'd like to watch it again before I said for sure. Mm. I recently watched The Wolverine for the first time, and I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Can I say something real quick?
You can.
Not about that. It's about X-Men in general.
Yeah.
But that I learned earlier today that I thought was interesting, and he had said something. The X-Men originally were created to kind of parallel the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. And Xavier is supposed to be like Martin Luther King Jr. and Magneto is supposed to be like Malcolm X, and their parts in the movement. Yeah, and their idea. That's and I can totally see that with the ideals. Yeah. That the characters have. Yeah. I just thought that was very interesting. Okay, that's it. Speaking of time travel, hey! Doctor Who. Yes, finally. We don't talk a lot of Doctor Who on here, and we should. Yeah. All the time. Mm-hmm. Oh wait, I'm sorry. Are we talking about the episode, or are we talking about the issue that we read? That's what we're about to discuss. Okay, let's do that. What would you like to talk about, Jesse? We all watched the first Doctor story, Planet of the Giants. Yeah, let's work from oldest to newest. Okay. So let's do that first. All right. Planet of the Giants is a first Doctor story
It's the first story arc from the second season of Doctor Who ever. So that would put it about 1964, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I'm glad you suggested this one. I had seen it before, but it's definitely one of the more memorable ones. From here on out, we'll probably talk spoilers on everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a little ridiculous, I guess, to discuss spoilers for a 64. So what is that? The 50-year-old movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
Or 50-year-old show.
Yeah.
So basically, this is Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, decades before Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yeah, that was this is the first time I watched it all the way through, but I had seen Randy watching it. I just initially refused to watch old stuff because I'm like, I'm not going to watch recreations. But, I had seen him watching that one, and I'm like, whoa, it's Honey, I Shrunk the Kids! And that is like really what it is.
It's really well done considering that era, because you think about how many years in the future before we get Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, and they do a pretty good job of showing these set pieces that make everything look pretty big.
Yeah.
The production on that story specifically is really stand out. I mean, I think when at least a lot of people who are familiar with that era of Doctor Who think of like productions, you might think of what's the one with the spiders and all the spiders and the bees, and is that Web of Fear? No, that's not Web of Fear.
No, but they kind of call forward to it because, like, Ian's like, what kind of a planet would have giant insects like this?
They do, don't they? I didn't even catch that.
Yeah, and then later on they wind up there, so that's pretty funny.
But, yeah, so that one stands out, and then I don't know if people think of this one, but they should, because this is definitely one of the better produced from set production and set design standpoint. It's pretty impressive given that I know it was a fairly low budget show. And I believe this was a story that they come up with during the first season, but they didn't have the money for it. And so when they got approved for a second season, boom, this is the story they chose first. I could be wrong, but I believe that's at least the rough idea of something I heard about it at some point.
No, I thought it was really impressive too, because a lot of their, especially the background stuff, there didn't really seem to be a whole lot necessarily, but it seems like a lot of times, like, they'll have a couple things around, and then they have like a painted background, which a lot of them are painted really amazingly, but you know, it's obviously really fake. But this one, and I think a lot of that too might have been that they didn't really have to have a background because everything was so far away. Yeah. But everything looked much more realistic than it did a lot of times.
Yeah. And they did a few moments of, like, obviously projecting onto a screen behind the actors. You know, that's a little less convincing, but for the most part, like, when they're out in the yard and you've got the huge things of grass and the dirt and there's the big bugs, I was impressed with when they're in the house at one point, a big fly lands by Barbara and she faints, but I was kind of impressed with the fly creature and the way it jiggled. It was
Yeah. But the story is set up really well in that regard too, because there's kind of like two stories happening where the Doctor and the crew, they materialize, but they wind up being shrunk down because something goes wrong with the materialization. Well, when they show up there's that sub story about pesticides, which I thought was like way ahead of its time, because now we're, you know, like now in our modern time, we're actually worried about killing bees and stuff like that. And this story kind of harkens to that too. But that whole pesticide thing, it's clever from a production standpoint too, because we only need these insects to be alive, like, sometimes. And then they die, and now all we have is a set piece that doesn't have to move anymore.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, precisely. It doesn't have to move. And then also, you don't have to worry about, like, well, why aren't there more creatures around? Because, you know, they're all dead because of the pesticides.
And that was another thing that I also really liked about that storyline, was they were there the whole time, but for the most part they had very little effect on what was going on, but everything still got resolved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And really, it had, like, nothing to do with them.
Well, except the only real effect that they would have had, I believe, was that can of exploding stuff. that, or whatever, did at least shocked, if not hurt, the bad guy, and he dropped the gun. Otherwise, things could have gone a little worse.
That's true.
But, but for the most part, it resolved itself, and I appreciated that there's a Doctor episode where the Doctor doesn't really, they
come in and swoop and save everything.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a little bit of... That's almost kind of a first Doctor type thing, though. There's a lot of times when, with the first Doctor stories, at least the early ones, it's not necessarily he comes and saves the day. A lot of times it's just he comes, they're in this situation, they have to deal with the situation and get out alive. And then oftentimes the story that they're getting wrapped up in kind of resolves itself. Sometimes they have an effect on it. But yeah, that's kind of a first Doctor thing. He's less of a hero that he becomes and more of just an explorer and a scientist.
Who gets locked out of the TARDIS an awful lot.
Yeah.
And people steal it a lot, I noticed that too.
The TARDIS?
Yeah.
And that becomes one of those things. The TARDIS is a very powerful tool that you could use to get around most plot points, so they have to
get rid of it.
Have a workaround, yeah. And that's true of new Doctor Who, too. There's a lot of times where they have to have some type of workaround where they can't get to the TARDIS, or else they could get out of there or zoom to where they need to.
Yeah.
Well, I think the fixed point in time was a huge course correct there. It was like, we can't change this. It's a fixed point in time, so traveling back in time isn't necessarily going to help us.
Yeah, yeah. And I was actually a little surprised because I think the specific wording of fixed point in time is, I don't know how new, but a newer concept. But, I mean, at least the newer wording for the concept. But even way back in during the Aztec storyline, which is a first Doctor story, that was still kind of a concept that was an issue because Barbara had a problem with these Aztecs sacrificing people, and the Doctor was like, you gotta kind of let them do what they do because that's just how it is. Mm-hmm. It needs to be that way at this point in time.
Yeah.
That's kind of off topic. I'm sorry, but yeah.
My favorite part was the drain, chained to the stopper. I don't know why, but I love that thing. I'm like, I want a big chain drain thing that climb up and down.
And poor Barbara, and of course she was ill at that time. But poor Barbara, when she tried to get off and on that thing, it looked so awkward. She looked like she was having such a hard time climbing down onto it. Mm-hmm. I kind of chuckled a little. That's one of that and the drain set. I thought that's one of the standout parts for sure in terms of set. Like when they're on the desk or the table or whatever, it's that stuff's not bad, but the yard stuff and that drain whole set, I thought was definitely standout. Mm-hmm. The little plot point about Barbara touching the insecticide and being worried, I like how she portrayed that. Like she's definitely worried. But it makes Ian seem like such a jerk because he's such a blockhead about it. He just doesn't connect why she's upset. Mm-hmm. And it just seems like he's extra jerky.
I don't even understand that because I'm pretty sure she specifically was like, "Oh, it's all sticky.
She did.
Can I have your handkerchief?" Well, what do you think she's talking about?
Yeah. And a moments later, he's like, "Make sure not to touch it." It's Well, the idea is he wasn't paying attention to her, but what's that?
Oh, Ian.
Oh yeah. Oh, Ian.
Good grief, you blockhead.
Chesterfield.
They
didn't really do it in that story, but the Doctor, it's kind of an ongoing joke that the first Doctor always mispronounces his name.
Mm-hmm.
He's always flubbing his lines, and he gets that one wrong all the time.
Yeah, so they kind of just like roll with it all the time.
Yeah.
And this is obviously after they have a little bit better setup in terms of production. I was really interested watching that Adventures in Space and Time about the first Doctor Who at the beginning. Mm-hmm. The fact that they pretty much shot everything like it was a live show and they were only allotted, like they'd have to switch between cameras, but for the most part they were only allotted 3 actual edits per episode. Mm-hmm. That blows my mind. Mm-hmm. And clearly by this time, by the second season, they had a bit better setup because there's no way they'd have been able to do it the way they did it, that same method. And if they did, I'm super impressed, but I doubt they did.
Yeah.
Is Verity Lambert, is she still around at this point?
Oh, I'm not sure. That's a good question. I'm not sure at what point she left. She might have been gone by now. It might have only been the first season, but I could be wrong.
I can't remember if it was who left first, if it was the original TARDIS gang or if it was her. I can't remember.
Oh, that's a good question.
I think the granddaughter left first. Oh,
you might be right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the granddaughter was the first companion to go.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Planet of the Giants. It drags a little bit, but it doesn't suffer the same type of drag on and stretching the story out as a lot of the older episodes do.
Yeah.
One, it doesn't hurt that it's only 3 episodes long.
Oh, that's true, huh?
And I was reading up on it too. Apparently, it was originally 4 parts, and they decided to kind of merge the 3rd and the 4th, and that original footage was lost, and so that would kind of make it the first missing episode.
Oh wow! Yeah, that's interesting.
So, sort of, but not kind of, but not really.
Well, they. That's crazy. I can't envision another episode's worth. But to their credit, also,
right.
I wouldn't notice when stuff was missing, when stuff was cut. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It works better as a 3-parter, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a lot of the older ones that might have benefited from that treatment.
Well, I watched Reign of Terror right before, because chronologically, Reign of Terror would be the finale of the first season. And it's one of those that 6 parts, 2 of the episodes are recons, and yeah, that really started to drag, especially with the 2 recons in the middle.
You had mentioned, I know you had messaged me about, I had asked you on, I think on Facebook, what was Reign of Terror about again?
Reign of Terror is the French Revolution, where this is all in that time where the Doctor is trying to get them back, and Ian's kind of like made him mad a little bit, and he's like, well, of course I can get you back home. And so he's like, that's it, I'm taking you home. And he gets him to Earth, but it's the wrong era. And then, followed up by Planet of the Giants, well, it's Earth, but something goes wrong with the dematerialization. And so now we've got Earth, but we're the size of insects.
Uh-huh. So, no, that was another aspect I liked. That was even the right time period.
Yeah.
And, yeah, exactly. They
still messing up, yeah.
Yeah. I see things I keep thinking about later. I enjoyed what they did, how they treated the idea of sound and voices, and why they couldn't communicate with. There was just little extra. There seemed like extra thought put into the science behind it that kind of makes Planet of the Giants stand out a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty fun, as far as first Doctor stories go. I think I could recommend this to people that were like, hey, what about the classic series? If I were going to recommend a first Doctor story, I might recommend this one.
Yeah, I think this one would stand up. And since it is the 3 episodes, the pacing is not too bad. And it's an interesting enough concept that, I think it would stand up, and a lot of people that are fans of the newer show or just a more modern audience would be able to tolerate it and get enjoyment out of it.
You could trick them into liking the old Doctor stuff.
And then be like, here you go, here's what's one, like Marco Polo or something where there's no episodes remaining.
Yeah, which is a bummer because you talk about production. I think that's supposedly like the best produced one of the first season because they really put a lot of time and effort into the costumes and whatnot.
Yeah, that's what I've always heard of it too.
And not a single episode exists that we're aware of.
All gone. Oh, I did want to say real quick, I know this is eating into time. I've been listening to a lot of the Big Finish audio plays.
Mm-hmm.
The ones I've been listening to have been pretty excellent. It's been mostly fourth and fifth Doctor stories.
Those are really good.
Check out the Eternal Summer. It's a 5th Doctor adventure. I believe it's just one of the regular Big Finish monthlies that they do or whatever.
Uh-huh.
But that one was excellent. It was very it's a lot more timey-wimey than some of like, well, you know, Doctor Who's time travel, but like, there's not as many stories specifically about like just kind of getting into a mess of time travel as you would expect. And that's a pretty good one. And I think I liked it a lot more than all the Fifth Doctor stories, like TV stories that we've watched so far. We haven't watched them all, but it was pretty good. I believe it was a Fifth Doctor and Nessa story.
That's good, because I can't stand Tegan.
Tegan? Oh. Tegan? Oh.
I was so disappointed when he finally dropped her off, and then picks her up again the next episode. I'm like, what are you doing?
Oh, I know.
You finally got rid of her. Jeez.
She's just so negative, like the whole time. And I admit, she didn't really sign up for it. She kind of got in a situation where she got kind of swept along, and her auntie got shrunk and all this.
Yeah.
So I understand. But she's just so, like, the whole time, she's like, take me home, I want to go home, I want to go home, basically. That she's traveling. And then he finally, like, she gets left at home at an airport, the airport she was supposed to start working at, perfectly where she needs to be. The doctor leaves, and she gets all upset. He left me. And then she shows up in the very beginning of the next episode or next season or whatever. I don't remember when she got dropped off and picked up.
Yeah.
And at first she's like, I have no job anymore. We can go on adventures. And then I'm pretty sure the next episode she's like, I hate being here.
Yeah.
Essentially, she's just such a whiner. I'm not a fan of her.
I know, me
as
either.
a companion.
Unfortunately, that's kind of a hallmark of the JNT era, where sometimes the writers would write these characters in a certain way. In particular, the next Doctor. After the Fifth Doctor, you get some characters that are even more kind of like, this is what they are, and I don't know if we'll ever see them evolve past it.
Oh, really? That sucks.
I mean, it's not, and I don't want to condemn the whole of the JNT era, because what you'll get is some kind of phenomenal hits and some phenomenal misses.
Yeah.
And that, I think you're seeing that already in the Fifth Doctor. But, yeah, the way that the Fifth Doctor rounds out with his final story, that is one of probably the best Fifth Doctor stories.
Yeah.
There's some good Fifth Doctor stuff to come, and there's some interesting plot lines. There's also some pretty kind of cheesy ones that are coming too.
It's been pretty much the same with any of the comic books I read, but for the audio plays, kind of what's holding me back is where we're at in the TV show. I pretty much want every character that's from the TV show to be introduced to me by the TV show. So that's why I'll target Fourth Doctor stuff and Fifth Doctor stuff with either on his own or with companions that I know.
Yeah.
Because there's Fifth Doctor audio plays with companions that are kind of spoilers for the show, so I'll avoid that. But so we'll hold off on that. The other Doctor Who, the comic book thing we were going to talk about. I'm excited for the new Doctor Who comic books, by the way. I can't wait for those. I think we should do web comic recommendations.
Okay.
Sure. The webcomic that I'm going to do, with these webcomics, with these reviews, I've been kind of avoiding the folks who are like the people that I communicate with regularly. I don't want it to be just me talking about my friends online kind of thing.
Sure.
But in this case, this week or this month, I'm going to talk about Ninja and Pirate, and he is one of the folks that I tweet with pretty regularly. And one of the reasons that I want to review his is that he, since the last episode came out, he dropped a book. So we've got a Ninja and Pirate Volume 1, which you can purchase if you go to his website. And his website is ninjaandpirate.com. So real simple and easy to find. And he's got links to his book on the sidebar. And you can also search it on Amazon.com is where you can find his book. And so Ninja and Pirate, just right off the bat, you think about ninjas and pirates and what makes them interesting, and so slap them together in kind of a roommate situation. So you've got your prototypical ninja, you got your prototypical pirate, and they are splitting the rent. kind of thing. I've actually written a blog about this particular webcomic, and in that I kind of talk about it like it's a slice of life comic meets action and adventure. So it's like The Odd Couple meets a Mike Tyson fight. or you get like Friends meets Bad Boys 2. Mm-hmm. So it's got a lot of different elements. So like one moment they're going to be talking about ridiculous old Shaquille O'Neal movies, or the Shaquille O'Neal movies that should or shouldn't have been made, and then the next they'll go off on a storyline tangent, which will be potentially an outer space epic. So with that in mind, Ninja and Pirates definitely highly recommended for me. Again, I'm biased because I generally like the comic and I like the creator, and so I think that it's easy to enjoy a creator when their product is so well done. If you look at Joe's art style, Joe Flanders is the creator, writer, and artist for Ninja and Pirate, and his style is he calls them roundabouts. The way that he draws his characters.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And they're kind of, like, I don't know, they're cylindrical, they're round, and so it's a very unique style. You can look at lots of different webcomics that kind of all look the same. You get a lot of talking heads, you got a lot of that, and his art style makes his comic kind of unique in that it's not going to look like everything else that you see out there, and yet within that he really explores what he can do within that style, and it comes together as a pretty fun, unique, and consistent product that I think people should read.
Yeah, I really like Ninja and Pirate, and I pulled it up. I don't know if Melanie's checked it out before, but I pulled it up while you were talking about it and flipped through a few of the panels, and yeah, it's good. I like Ninja and Pirate quite a bit.
Right now he's doing a lot of one-offs. He'll kind of jump between one-offs and long-form stories, but he's been doing long-form story pretty consistently with the strips for quite a while, and so he uses the chapter kind of format, mm-hmm. And so I think he's on chapter 4, maybe, and so chapter 4 has been a lot of like one-offs, where they're, sometimes it's Ninja and Pirate go to an art museum, and sometimes it's just Joe kind of commenting on something. Like I think one of the more recent ones he did was actually about Days of Future Past and designing the costume for Mystique.
Mystique, yeah, we're looking at that one.
That was pretty awesome.
No wardrobe ever, always. Because reasons.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. That's ninjaandpirate.com. Is what we're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go read it.
Go read it.
And you know what? Buy his book, because that's a good way to sit down and enjoy the first 2 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll have links in the show notes to that, of course. In fact, I'm going to piggyback your recommendation. That'll be mine too. Melanie's got one of her own, so I'm going to skip mine and say, yeah, go check out Ninja and Pirate. What do you got, Melanie?
SMBC, which is Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal. And that's, Cereal, obviously, cereal.
Yeah.
It's by Zach Wiener, or Wiener Smith. I'm not entirely certain which. Either way, what a horrible last name.
Yeah. On the website, yeah. On the website of the comic, it's smbc-comics.com. It's by Zach Wiener, but if you check him out on Twitter, it's Zach Wiener Smith. Maybe we're pronouncing that wrong, but that seems the logical way to pronounce it.
Yeah.
No, I think that's right. I've heard some podcasts that he's done. So.
Okay, yeah, good.
Yeah, it's funny. I like it. There's sometimes it seems sciencey, which I enjoy because I like science a lot. And then a lot of times it's not. It's just silly, funny stuff, which I also enjoy. So.
But it seems like it's like a one-off style stuff.
Yeah, it is.
And I hadn't heard about this till you told me about it just today, and I was checking it out, and yeah, it's funny.
Yeah, and the thing that drew it to me, which is not going to apply to anyone other than us three, the little icon that pops up for it is a picture, a cartoon character that looks like Steve. And I was like, oh my god, it's a cartoon Steve! And that's why I started reading it.
Yeah, you found it on Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm assuming, I could be wrong, but I'm assuming that's a cartoon version of the writer, the creator. But yeah, he looks a lot like Steve. But yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. See, this is my problem. I can't be like, oh, and this and that. I'm like, it's good.
No, it's okay. Yeah, that's a recommendation. Well, it's like you said. Go ahead.
He's really involved in a lot of projects too. If you poke around on his site, you're going to find that he also does some video series. Was it Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal TV or
like theater or something? I think.
Yeah, theater. Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah, and those. Dig through some of those too if you get a chance, because those are super funny as well.
We actually tried, but the computer wouldn't let us. It was.
It didn't want to. Yeah, the plugin started crashing. I should try it, and we'll try it in Firefox sometime.
Okay.
We're in Chrome right now.
But yeah, we did want to check that out. We just weren't able to.
Yeah. I'll have links to that. And we also found he has a Twitter account, his personal Twitter account, and the Twitter account for the comic itself, the webcomic, which he seems to post all his new stuff on there, of course. So we'll include those links as well. Oh, if we're gonna move on to the poll list, I'm gonna have to pull up. We're gonna have to pick the next poll, or the next pick. We're gonna have to pick the next pick.
Pull that up then.
Oh. Thank you. I was drowning a little bit on that one.
Well, that's a little pick me up then.
Well, this episode we're going to be talking about the Punisher, like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, Punisher Max specifically. But next month, it looks like the winner by, you can say a narrow margin, right?
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of votes on this thing. I'm hoping as the show grows, so does this poll list of voting thing, but that's all right. All right, the next poll list is, I would assume you would pronounce that We Three?
Looks like it to me. I have no idea what that is, so.
Is it like animals that can talk in robot suits or something? I probably just butchered that.
I don't. Well, let's see. No, you're absolutely 100% correct, actually.
Yeah, I know things.
Oh, that's adorable! Look at that.
I did not know that.
Oh, I like it.
What is this? Okay. See, we know like nothing. Well, Jesse clearly knows, but we knew nothing of this. Oh, this is a 3-issue miniseries. Okay, well, we'll do the whole thing then.
Oh, that's easy. We can do that.
We Three, according to Wikipedia, is a 3-issue American comic book miniseries by writer Grant Morrison and artist Frank Quitely, and that is what I think we had come across this on a list and added it on there ourselves because of the creative team.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And it's described, let's see. And the creative team described the kinetic style as Western manga. And it's from 2004, produced by Vertigo. So yeah, that is what we'll be reading for next month. I'm excited for that. That looks interesting.
I'm noticing we're reviewing an awful lot of like animal style, it's like Animal Farm style books on our poll list.
That's a good point, isn't it? Yeah, you're right.
Mouse, Punisher, and We Three.
All right, cool. I'm excited for that.
Smaller case, lowercase, I meant.
It looks cute, but what isn't cute is the Punisher Max.
No, and this is not for kids. It says so right on the cover.
Yeah, and I'd like to reiterate, there is some hardcore gore and language, adult themes. This is very much not for kids.
Yeah.
This actually, and I've read some other Garth Ennis stuff, and he when he can, he likes colorful language, and he has a very specific, he has a talent of working with colorful language.
Yes, he does.
But this is definitely one of the harder edged books I've read, period, in terms of the adult nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. But having said that, this is what I want the next Punisher movie to be. Like, this is the Punisher movie we need to have.
Yeah, I agree. I've never seen Punisher Warzone. I think it was like a direct-to-DVD thing. I could be wrong. I've heard that. Have you seen it?
Yeah. I missed the original guy.
Okay. Yeah, I have not seen that.
There's things that were pretty good about. I mean, it wasn't a horrible movie, but it could have been better.
I heard it's got some edge to it, though, is why I mentioned it. But it's really not even just edge. It's the way that the edge is used is important.
Yeah.
If they would have maybe put more of that edge into the first movie, then we maybe would have seen, more of that particular take on it, I guess, because it's a wholly different guy in the role of the Punisher.
Yeah.
In that second one, if it's even meant to be a sequel, I don't know.
Yeah, I did see the first one, and it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either, I suppose.
Yeah, it had a little bit too much camp for the Punisher.
Yeah.
You really need to avoid camp in a Punisher movie.
In trade paperback form, this is Punisher Max in the beginning, first volume of trade paperback. It's the first story arc, first 6 issues of Garth Ennis' run on the Punisher with art by Louis LaRosa. And yeah, this is hardcore. This is real hardcore. And it lets you know from the beginning. It's not even, I mean, it's not an origin story at all. Like, you get the setup at the beginning of the first issue of like what made him the Punisher, and then you got the story.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where to start with this. I enjoyed this quite a bit. Garth Ennis also did Preacher, I believe, and I think what's that?
Ah.
Yeah.
I can see a little bit of that stylistic similarities.
Mm-hmm.
He likes exploding craniums and
he does.
half missing half faces and half heads.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cranium explosion and stuff in both of those. This and that.
I enjoy it.
But yeah, I enjoyed this quite a bit. I was always interested in the Punisher, but I honestly think this is the first Punisher comic I've ever read, which is a little sad. So it was kind of a list of shame thing for me. But this is what I had expected or what I had hoped for in a Punisher. He's just a quiet, hard, heavy, very violent anti-hero, which is what I had expected.
Yeah.
And it's him taking out, I mean, there's this other, it's not just him taking out mob guys, there's this story. The mob guy situation is almost like, well, that's status quo. That's just what he does.
Yeah.
And we'll probably discuss spoilers here, just saying.
Yeah, you almost have to.
Yeah. And then we've got this other story where essentially he's trying, these people are trying to recruit him to their cause. Mm-hmm. Well, just off the top, what did you guys think about it? Did you like it?
Oh, yeah, I liked it.
Yeah?
I liked it very much.
Yes. I concur.
This
is well done.
Yeah, and this is exactly the kind of person that I prefer most of the time anyway, is
kind of the
good guys that are still kind of bad guys. I like that a lot more than like a squeaky clean good guy that's boring. I don't care for it. I like him a little rough.
You like an anti-hero and a bad boy.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I do.
He's got his rules, and they're as black and white as his costume.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's no wiggle room. You are either on his side or you're on the other side, and he will deal justice.
Yeah, and
he will punish you.
He's got no. Yeah, if you're on the other side, he's got no conflict of conscience about just blowing you away and walking away.
And that's really driven home in this, because you've got that moment. There's some very clever storytelling that happens in this. Because you've got like almost 3 arcs happening. This story where you've got the mob story, which is kind of your that's your usual Punisher. Then you've got your CIA, or what you suppose is the CIA, and they interweave Micro.
Yeah,
which is pretty interesting to pull him in, and the way that they do that.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was interesting that for a big chunk of this whole story, the Punisher's locked up in a room talking to Micro.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Like a huge middle section of this. I mean, it's 6 issues, but a large middle section is he's pretty much taken out of the equation,
mm-hmm.
and it kind of gives time for the mobsters and the other stuff to like kind of start the ball rolling.
Yeah.
But even that stuff is super cool. And the little bit, like he speaks very little, but that goes to the like, it's hard to say it without having to Grawlix myself out.
Uh-huh.
But you know, the silent, not brute, but you know, ugh.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's a hard case.
Hard case. Thank you. There you go. You know what I was going for.
The way that they drew his face specifically, and kind of the other guys too, I was not I didn't like very much. There was way too much texture going on, and I know he's supposed to be old and gnarled, but it was like there were a couple times I had to be like, wait, what am I looking at here? Is that supposed to be his face? There's just way too many
the art
lines, and
I don't want to say the art's bad because
no,
I don't think it's definitely a stylistic choice, and there's a lot of times where the art it doesn't look like that. Most of the other characters look normal, but yeah, specifically, and you pointed it out. When it's Micro and him in that room specifically,
mm-hmm.
like there's so much wrinkles and weird detail, and it almost looks, and there's a lot that looks anatomically incorrect. It doesn't
mm-hmm.
look like it should.
Yeah.
And the art looks grotesque. That makes their face look weird and grotesque and mutated.
Yeah, I don't know if that was a choice that they, that's what they were going for,
I would assume so.
To try and make you be like, ugh, about it or something, because that's how I felt.
It's pretty noir. It's probably the most noir portion of the of the story, especially in that black and white basically interrogation style room. And
mm-hmm.
it kind of makes me think of like Frank Miller stuff. It starts to make me think of Sin City kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right, a lot more texture and not quite as minimal as we're used to seeing in what would be Frank Miller's style.
Mm-hmm. One of my favorite moments is when the Punisher, when he finally gets out of that room,
mm-hmm.
essentially, things, at this point, everything's going downhill. Like,
mm-hmm.
it's exploding. Everything's happening.
Mm-hmm.
He uses another dude to headbutt another guy in the face. He grabs the back of one dude's head and uses him to headbutt a guy across the hall in the face, and that amused me. I don't know why. Because it's using one fool to beat another fool, that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You pity the fool.
One thing that I like, and not just in this, I like it in Preacher also. I like what he does with women. They're not like dainty little innocent flowers, and I really like that.
Mm-hmm.
The woman in this one, jeez.
Yeah.
she's
lurid.
Oh man.
And hardcore.
Uh-huh.
And I like the bit where the Punisher's walking out, and is he carrying Micro or something?
He might be.
And he's walking out, and she's shot laying on the floor, and what she says made me laugh out loud.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
It's lurid, but it was very humorous. Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Inappropriate to her character.
Totally. Yeah.
Well, and the only other female character that you really see is one of his informants, and she's really done well too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I like that scene too, because it reinforces like Punisher's a hard case, and it's like you said, once you're on the other side, it's just black and white with him. He doesn't care. But it's one of those moments where it's like, it's the anti-hero moment where it's like, he comes from a good place, but he will blow people away and not think twice.
Mm-hmm.
It's that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I like the story that he tells his friend.
Mm-hmm.
To kind of,
Oh, yeah, the story he tells Micro.
Yeah.
About his neighbor when he, just after the incident with his family. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's a good story, and it's a good thing to use to mess with somebody's head too, I think.
And he uses that again. He comes back around to that.
Mm-hmm. At the end.
With Micro at the end.
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing that they do with the Punisher's story arc where they give, like at the beginning, he's winning. He's ruling face on the mob. And then this whole thing with Micro happens, and he has that moment of failure where he's stuck in the room for, 3 issues?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And in that time, you get this moment where you're kind of questioning, will he, won't he take Micro's deal, which would be, as Micro puts it, a way to save him. So the Punisher gets this opportunity and this choice to, potentially, or at least, that's what we're led to believe, is he could go a different path. He could potentially change his stars and stop being the Punisher. And he, in the end, he chooses to, no, that's all bunk, and I'm the Punisher.
Yeah.
I stopped being anything else a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then of course there's a little bit of there's still like a seedy side under even that deal.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm pretty sure, like he brings up, I think, that he's like, there's always something more to it, and then eventually you find out what it is.
Yeah, which is bad news for Micro.
Yeah. And I also I thought it was interesting the CIA guy, or whatever that group is.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought he was going to be one of the guys that the Punisher was going to deal with him, and
instead the mob guys dealt with him.
It wasn't even mob guys. It was.
Not that guy.
It was Homeland Security.
Oh, in the airplane or the helicopter.
Oh, yeah.
No, I was thinking the guys that the mob guys got a hold of in the car.
Oh.
And left him on the street with...
No, I felt bad for that guy.
Yeah, me too.
No, I was talking about the main CIA or whatever group it was.
Yeah.
Because I guess it was his own little offshoot, but I don't remember what it was called.
Yeah, that was a wild moment.
Yeah.
Where they're like waiting for a go green, whatever. And then they get it. And then he's like, all right. And they just like, whoop, out the helicopter. Yeah.
And that's another thing about this is the Punisher's, hardcore. But so many people in this comic book are the one guy that wouldn't die. And then that guy even fell, had already been shot up and then fell out of a freaking helicopter, and he's still laying there trying to make deals with people.
Yeah.
I'm like, all of the people in this book are like crazy awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, those guys, the two kind of wicked, mean mob guys, the henchmen, basically, Pitsy and Inky or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Ink and Pitsy. Yeah.
Yeah, those guys were both. Those were some characters for sure. And that's one thing. Like everybody, there's like, for the most part, there's like no throwaway characters. There's so much. There's so much character to each. There's so much personality to each character in the story.
Yeah, I agree.
It's pretty interesting. But yeah, Pitsy, he's the one that just wouldn't die.
He was the Michael Myers of the crew.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? He's still coming? And Punisher even says that, basically.
He's like, oh, it was
Are you kidding me?
Reflex step. It had to be.
And then another. It had to be. Yeah. And specifically, like, his whole fight with Pitsy makes for some, like, really good... I like good internal dialogue or monologue, internal dialogue from the Punisher's character, and you don't get a whole lot through it, but towards the end you do. And yeah, that makes for some very cool lines, like that whole moment where the guy's face is gone and he's still stepping, and the Punisher's like, oh, I hope that's reflex.
Yeah.
The end, from a storytelling point of view, was interesting, especially when they got, like, when you get to the end where it's like so-and-so died of a gunshot wound to the cranium, and it go through all these people, and then it even hits Micro like a couple pages before you even know his true fate. So it sets it up, and yeah.
Yeah, if you had any doubt, well, it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's, like, a lot of the violence I don't mind. Like, I don't mind some gore. And I like some gory horror movies and stuff like that. Like, it can be over the top and fun. But there's a lot of grotesqueness in this that occasionally really hit me wrong, where I'm like, oh, like, it could be bothersome. It could be bothersome grotesqueness in this.
Yeah, but
I'm not sensitive, shush.
you're more sensitive than I am.
Shush.
That's all. I mean, you know, I'm not saying you're sensitive in general. I'm probably less sensitive than lots of people. But, you know, horror is basically my preferred genre. Well, horror and sci-fi. Well, so this stuff doesn't get to me as much as it does to a lot of people.
Well, I think it's I don't know. There's certain things, but there's definitely some like really potentially bothersome violence in this book.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, it's a violent book. It's supposed to be.
Oh, I know.
Not for the faint of heart. This series.
No,
definitely not.
But yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit. It was exactly the Punisher that I was hoping to get to read.
Mm-hmm. Well, I actually did not know much of anything about the Punisher except, smidge. And I was very satisfied with it. I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm. And it also, like, the writing, like, reinforced there's certain... And I imagine this is about the same time period of the Preacher stuff that I've read. I think you've read all the Preacher stuff.
I have read all the Preacher
stuff. I haven't. I've only got so far into it. But there's a lot of, like, you can tell the Garth Ennis style. Mm-hmm. Not even just in, like, the violence and stuff like that, but the type of characters. Mm-hmm. Like Ink, specifically. Like, just... He's got, like, the eyes that... they're not crossed, but they're, like... You know what I'm saying? But, like, just the way he looks... Yeah, the way he looks and just the kind of character he is would fit perfectly into what I've read of Preacher. Mm-hmm. Like, there's just these... He does really well with, like, outlandish, wild, especially bad characters. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there was a lot of just dialogue and style decisions and stuff like that I could recognize as being mirrored in Preacher. Mm-hmm. So I found that interesting. So yeah, The Punisher Max.
Yeah.
I'm glad that one came up. That was good and violent, but also but enjoyable and quite the turn from the previous poll list pick.
Oh yeah.
Definitely.
It's crazy to think that he was a Spider-Man character.
Yeah.
Punisher, that's his first appearances in Spider-Man.
Yeah. Was he
come a long way?
Oh yeah, for sure. Knowing this Punisher, having this Punisher in my head, I'm gonna have to search out other Marvel books because I know he'll pop up in Avengers stuff, and it's just hard to picture this character specifically having a lot of dealings with the Avengers and other characters.
Yeah, I don't see how it would work well.
He's still a bad guy, like, in their eyes. He's still a bad guy.
Right.
He doesn't get a whole lot of crossovers, but when he does, it's done both well and very poorly. Like, they brought him into the Civil War storyline, and the way that they brought him in there was really cool because it was this moment of, you've got the two sides. You've got the side for superhero registration, and you've got the side for freedom kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And Punisher, obviously, he's off the grid style, so he's firmly on the side of that group, which is headed by Captain America. So Captain America has to make kind of this moral call on, do we accept this? Is this the road we've gone down? Are we really in league with people like the Punisher? And so, as far as using him in the superhero world, that's probably one of the better ways I've ever seen it done.
The Civil War stuff's another one that's on my list of shame.
I have no shame because I don't even know what's supposed to be good.
Yeah.
But I want to read it all. So.
Well, there's an awful lot of Marvel stuff that I just haven't read.
Mm-hmm. But that you're.
I'm kind of more of a DC guy just because. So I tried to trim down my monthly buys. I placed my order recently, and I would like to support more indie books because there's some really good ones. Like I buy Revival and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So I was looking at where I could trim down, and I want the Batman books, and there's several other DC books that I'm really enjoying. And I looked at my list, and like almost all but like 3 titles are DC books. And I just don't want to get rid of them.
Yeah.
And you sent me that message about you sent me that link about the current creative team leaving Moon Knight after issue 6, and I'm kind of bummed about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I might be interested to see what the next creative team does with it. But that might be a possibility for me to drop soon. But that means I'm not buying any Marvel.
Yeah.
I thought you were still getting some X-Men.
No, I dropped those a little while ago.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I just fell too far behind. Like, you were still reading them.
Yeah.
And they're good. I was really enjoying, like, all the Brian Michael Bendis X-Men stuff, which is the books you were reading.
Yeah.
But I fell so far behind, and I was like, well, if I got to trim something, I don't even know what's going on here, so I'll trim it there, you know?
Yeah.
That type of thing. But everything else,
I've got an awful lot of IDW, and I'm the guy that doesn't like reboots, but I got a lot of IDW stuff.
I was buying, a couple years ago, I was buying a lot of IDW stuff too, but they that's when they still, I mean, they had Doctor Who up till just recently, but that was a lot of Doctor Who stuff. But they haven't been doing a lot of original concepts, and I like some of the intellectual properties they have right now, but there's just not a lot of stuff that I'm willing to spend my money on every month. Mm-hmm. So I just haven't, I'm sure it's good, but I just haven't been buying much IDW.
Speaking of, it'll be too late once this goes out, but the Humble Bundle, today's the last day of the Humble Bundle.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we have, I don't know if we'll be able to get in on that or not. It's a good deal. It's a great deal.
Yeah, it's a great deal.
I don't know.
And they don't have the Star Trek stuff in there. I thought for sure we were right about that.
Yeah, I was surprised. Yeah, me too. I was surprised that they didn't include that in there, but...
We have all that already, don't we?
Yeah. But I suppose, keep it strictly Doctor Who. Makes sense.
Yeah, but that was pretty awesome.
I know. It was a great deal. And, it goes to the, what's the Comics Legal Defense...
Oh, yeah.
Fund or whatever. I can't remember the exact title. Mm-hmm. So that's not a bad thing at all. But I would assume a lot of people did get in on it, so that's good. Mm-hmm. There's a whole lot of Doctor Who comics. All right. Well, I think that's the show.
Oh, hey.
Wow.
Yeah. With a few minutes to spare.
Awesome.
Man. We're efficient. We're efficient.
Yeah. Editing this is going to be interesting. I'm not good with reviews. I really wish I was better at spoken word reviews. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to just...
I wish I was more eloquent.
Yeah, and I don't want to just, write everything down and then read that, because we know how that goes, too.
Yeah, well, maybe you should have me read it, because I'm fairly...
Proofread it first, so you're like, no.
No, read it.
Oh, if you're like, all right, here's what I thought, Melanie.
No, but I meant, oh no, I was thinking of when you did the little,
the Swamp Thing?
Yeah, preview.
I will probably do that
again,
and if you want to read it, I'll have you read it.
Okay.
But
because despite my, I can actually read fairly well.
Yeah, next month I'm thinking Swamp Studies again.
Yes.
And that'll cover book 2. Offhand, I'm not sure which issues that is, but that's book 2, the collected issues of Saga of the Swamp Thing.
Okay.
The Alan Moore stuff.
Are we doing the whole thing? Or are we doing?
Ooh, that means we're gonna cover Alan. Yeah, the whole book 2.
Okay.
That means we're gonna cover an Alan Moore run and a Grant Morrison run on the same podcast, and I don't think Alan Moore would like that at all.
Oh.
Have you ever heard anything about that?
Just there's some animosity.
Yeah, Alan Moore seems to have a pretty big hate on for Grant Morrison, to the point where he said, if you read any Grant Morrison, I don't even want you reading my stuff.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Well, he is a little bit.
he seems like he's got some negativity, that guy.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen some interview stuff. He's very well spoken. I like listening to him talk, but yeah, he definitely has some animosity towards a lot of people in the whole industry, which, whatever. Like, I don't mind at all, and I'm not going to stop reading his stuff over anything he says, because Alan Moore's great. He writes some great stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't mind that he has this animosity towards the industry itself, like particularly like the big two and that element. I can understand he's been wronged. He knows a lot of people that have been wronged in different situations. And I've even heard him say that there's a lot of good work still going on in the indie, with the indie companies and the kind of the indie side of things. But stuff where he'll pick out specific people and be like, if you read that, I don't even want you reading my stuff. Come on, dude.
Yeah.
That's a little much.
That's using your fame for something you don't need to do.
Yeah.
It's kind of like when celebrities really get on a bandwagon with a political party or a person. Like, I can't. Like,
Well, I'm thinking about it. There's certain things. Send us some emails. Send us some messages. Letters at grawlixpodcast.com. And email us if you want to talk to us. Have us ask us questions. Have us read it out on the podcast. We'll certainly do that. Also, if you're on... Oh, sorry, what's that?
Oh, I was going to say, we've got a Facebook page, and we need people to like us.
Yeah, we do. We need some likes. Like us. It's facebook.com/Grawlix Podcast if you're on Twitter. And our Twitter is hopping at times. We're at Grawlix Podcast on Twitter. Our website, of course, is grawlixpodcast.com. We're on YouTube at youtube.com/Grawlix Podcast. Keep an eye out. There's nothing there at this exact moment, but keep an eye out there. Some stuff should start showing up there very soon.
Sweet.
This is Melanie. You had me at Grawlix.
This is Randy. Show me the Grawlix.
And I'm Jesse, and my little Grawlix, friendship is Grawlix.
Thank you for listening to the Grawlix Podcast. The Grawlix Podcast is a production of Electronic Media Collective and Vorpal Arrow Studios. This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. To hear more, visit grawlixpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/grawlixpodcast and like us on Twitter, twitter.com/grawlixpodcast.
I didn't catch it now. When I listen to it later, I'll probably be like, oh, okay, that's what she was saying. Ignore me.
No, just saying.
Ignore me!